Hello everyone, good morning or good afternoon depending where you are. So my name is Lucas from Maritimes Immigration, and we are a consulting business here located in Halifax. We help people apply for study permits, work permits, permanent residence, and we have clients all over the world. So today we're going to be doing this Instagram Live in English. We're going to be talking about the latest updates from IRCC. There's been many updates in 2024. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to write in the chat, or you can also write in the question section there, so we can see your questions. And we're gonna be talking a little bit about the latest updates. As I mentioned, we're gonna be covering the reasons why immigration is changing so much here in Canada, and that could affect people who are already here in the country, or maybe someone who is outside overseas and they're thinking about immigrating to Canada, or maybe coming here to study or work. So it's important for you to understand what these changes mean to you and your family, especially if you want to come here with your spouse or children. How could that affect your plans, right? So like I said, feel free to write your questions. If you want to write in Portuguese or Spanish or English, it's okay. I'll just answer everything in English. And we had one question that was submitted, I think last night. I think it's good to start the Instagram Live with this question here. And then we can continue with all the updates. And if anyone has any updates, we can answer that as well. So we got one question that is regarding a permanent residence application, right? So what to expect if you already applied or you're near to applying for permanent residence here in Canada. So one thing you have to understand, there are two types of applicants, right? So you have someone who is not with an application in progress, and someone who is already in the system, right? Applying for maybe nomination with the province, or you already have a permanent residence application in progress. So if you haven't applied yet, so let's say you haven't even applied for nomination, you're in Canada, or maybe you're overseas, you have a job offer, but you haven't really applied for nomination or permanent residence, yes, the changes could impact you because right now, for example, the provinces are taking a long time to process nomination. There's a backlog of applications, right? So that could take longer, or maybe they will change the requirements and then you're not eligible anymore. But if you are already with your application in progress, then you should be fine, right? So if you're already going through the Provincial Nominee program, or maybe you received the nomination, you're going to apply through, I don't know, express entry or outside express entry, then you're fine. But yeah, the biggest issue now is people who haven't applied, and you have to keep an eye on the updates to see if this will affect your future here in Canada, right? And feel free to write any questions here or in the question section there. But I think the most important update that we had this year was the immigration plan that was released in October. So they are actually reducing the number of permanent residents in Canada for 2025, 2026. So this reduction, why they're doing that, right? There are a lot of issues here in Canada lately, especially with regards to housing and healthcare. So during the pandemic, Canada put a pause on welcoming people into Canada, and then after 2 years they kind of opened the doors and everyone could come in, and there were good policies that would allow people to apply for visitor visa, work permit, study permit. So it was very open, and with that, with those policies, we received too many people at the same time, and then the country couldn't accommodate everyone, right? So we actually have a housing crisis. It's expensive to rent a place. It's expensive to buy a house. It's hard to find family doctors, right? So this is the biggest issue we have in the country now. And if you're outside the country, it's very unfortunate, right? Maybe you have to change your plans. But people who are in Canada, sometimes they're struggling, right, to find a place to live, or maybe even to see a doctor, right? Because there's not enough people in healthcare, right? So this is the main reason why they're changing the plan. So the plan that was in place until October was that Canada wanted to accept 500,000 new permanent residents, right? And the number was adjusted, right? So their new plan is to welcome 395,000 in 2025, and they will reduce that further to 380,000 in 2026, and 365,000 in 2027. So actually, we're going to see a reduction on the number of permanent residents in the country, right? And how could that affect you, right? So if I can give you a piece of advice, if you really want to immigrate to Canada in the next few years, you have to focus on high demand sectors, right? So there are a few sectors where I can see growth, and I can see immigration targeting this kind of professionals, right? So if you're interested in studying Canada, or maybe if you can upgrade your skills in your home country, I highly recommend to have education and work experience in healthcare and construction, right? These are the two main sectors that Canada will bring more and more people. And their goal is by 2027, they want to have 60% of immigrants coming from these two sectors, right? So if you're not working in healthcare and you're not working in construction, then you're gonna have like to plan a little bit better to immigrate to Canada, right? But people who are, let's say, nurses, or you work with construction, then you could have good chances, right? But it doesn't mean that people who work in other sectors cannot immigrate, but they will facilitate applications for people who have this kind of experience, right? And it's really important to plan ahead, because Canada is changing the next 2-3 years, right? So you have to understand that these changes, they are happening now, and they will keep updating the policies and make it more flexible, or more interesting for people in healthcare, right? And I see that Talita asked about caregiver. Caregiver is one of the high demand areas, right? So we work with a lot of people who work with healthcare, people who work as a continuing care assistant, CCA. That's a great market. People who work with children, especially here in Nova Scotia, they have a specific program for people who want to take care of children, work in daycares, right? So these are the market here. This is the market in Atlantic Canada, and I'm sure in the rest of the country they also need people to work with children and the elderly, right? So these sectors are really important. And if you look at express entry is going to grow more and more and more. And I know that a lot of people, they think I'm not qualified for express entry. I don't think it's a good option for me. I'm starting to advise people more and more and more to look into express entry, because this is going to be the main program, I believe, for the next 2-3 years. And the provinces, they are still important. You can still apply for permanent residence through the province. But I see immigration shifting from, the provinces to bring people in from express entry, right? And they are actually creating categories in express entry. And there are categories that are targeting people who speak French, right? So French is extremely important. If you are thinking about improving, let's say, your English, just take some French lessons as well. Maybe this is a good way for you to obtain additional points in express entry. Or maybe there are specific programs for francophones if you speak French, right? So I highly recommend looking into learning the language, right? It doesn't mean you have to be fluent in both languages, but if you do have good fluency in English and French, yes, you have an advantage, like a big advantage in Canada, right? So I highly recommend looking to French, right? That's a category in express entry. Healthcare. So healthcare covers a lot of positions, right? So from laboratory assistant to nurses, continuing care assistant, there are a lot of professions that are included in the health category in express entry. They also have the STEM category, people who work with engineering, IT, math. That's really important. They have trades and logistics, right? So these are the main categories for express entry. And of course, this is general, right? Express entry is for the entire country. But for example, if you want to settle down in New Brunswick or Ontario, BC, so every province, they have their own market, right? So they have their own demand. So you have to understand where you want to settle down, what kind of jobs you have in this area, and look at the provincial nominee programs, right? So for example, here in Nova Scotia, we have a high demand for continuing care assistant, early childhood educator, and it's the same in New Brunswick, right? So we're also looking into bringing people for who want to work in daycare, right? So we have similarities between the provinces, but some provinces, they are more interested in IT or engineering, and others are more like daycare workers and this kind of occupations, right? So if you're planning on coming to Canada, I recommend looking into the province, looking at the market, see what kind of jobs you have there. Don't neglect the language skills, right? Keep studying English and French if those are not your main languages, right? And make sure you have plan A, plan B, plan C, right? Because if plan A fails, then you have plan B and plan C, right? So this is the biggest change, in my opinion, is the level of immigration and the level of permanent residence in the country. And the other big change is that Canada is putting a cap on students, foreign workers, even visitors, right? People who are coming here to visit. And the biggest issue we have now is that since Canada is putting pressure on people who are here in Canada, they're reducing the number of PR applications you can submit. People are getting stressed, right? Because you're not seeing a clear pathway for immigration anymore. And we are seeing a lot of people filing refugee applications, right? Asylum, claiming asylum in Canada. So this is a big issue as well, right? Because now we have people who were supposed to leave, but they're not leaving, and now they're claiming asylum, right? So this is also affecting other areas of immigration here in Canada. And one of the biggest changes we have is the change to the visitor visa, right? So if you're from a country that is visa exempt, you can apply for an ETA. So it means that you don't need to apply for what we call like a paper visa, right? A temporary resident visa. You just apply for ETA, $7, you can board a plane, come to Canada. But let's say you're from a country that needs visa, right? So for example, Colombia, Nigeria, Mexico now, there are some exceptions there, but you do need a visa generally, right? So now Canada is changing the policies, and they are not going to automatically issue multiple entry visitor visa. So that means that, for example, people who used to have a 10-year visa, maybe if they reapply for a visa now, maybe they will get a 5-year visa or a 3-year visa or a one-entry visa, right? So why they're doing that? Because they want to reduce the number of temporary residents here in the country, and they want to understand why you're coming here. Are you coming here just to visit family, friends, for tourism, or are you actually coming here to claim refugee, right, or asylum, right? So they're trying to change the policies because of the numbers, right? They can see the numbers are shifting here, and they have to take action on all these changes, right? So if you're thinking about applying for a visitor visa, we can help you with that. People think it's a simple application, but there's a high chance of refusal if you don't put together a good application, right? So what I recommend, if you have family and they want to come here, they need a visitor visa, you need to put together a good application so they get a multiple entry visa, right? It's not just a one entry or a 2-year visa. The goal is try to get a 10-year multiple entry visa, and we'll see how it goes now because this is a very recent update from November. So hopefully we're gonna see some improvement there. And we have other updates that are very important. I'm seeing more updates with the provinces. So like I said, Express Entry is becoming the biggest program. It is the biggest program in Canada for immigration. The provinces are very important as well, but we are seeing a shift from provinces processing applications very quickly to having to wait months and months and months to get a nomination, right? So for example, New Brunswick just closed all the programs, right? So they're not processing Atlantic Immigration Program, they're not processing skilled worker because they reached the cap of applications in September, right? And I believe the AIP was in August. So this is very alarming because they have a cap and they reach the cap like 3 months in advance before the end of the year, 4 months in advance. So this just shows how many people are here and how many people are applying, right? So you have to think that you're actually competing with others and you have to be the best, right? You have to have good language skills, you have to have a relevant work experience, you have to get your education assessed, and you need all of that so you can apply and apply fast before the others, right? So you're meeting the cap. And the other provinces, for example, Nova Scotia, we're seeing processing times of over 6 months, right? So what happens if your work permit's expiring in 3 months and then you're applying for a nomination? You're not gonna get a nomination before your work permit expires. So what do you do, right? You have to stop working. You cannot get that work permit extension, right? So Canada, they actually created this year a pilot program where some people, they can apply for a temporary work permit if you apply for nomination and it's still in progress. But unfortunately, none of the Atlantic provinces, they are part of this program, right? So if you do have an application, let's say with PEI or Newfoundland or even Ontario, no, Ontario is not part, you cannot apply for a work permit extension, right? So you just have to wait for that nomination before you can apply. And that can be very frustrating, it can be very stressful, right? So it's important for you guys to plan ahead and be ahead of everyone, right? So let's check what other updates we had this year. There were major updates regarding LMIA, foreign workers, right? And why they're doing all these changes, why they're making life harder, right, for people. The biggest issue we see now is that there are a lot of problems with agents, with companies, with people who are taking advantage of foreign workers and students, right? So Canada is working hard to crack on people who are providing illegal immigration advice. They are providing fake documents, fake job offers, they are selling job offers, right? So there's a major problem in Canada for people who are being scammed and they're being taken advantage of. Some people, they don't even get their visa approved. Of course, they don't leave their country, their home country, but some people, they actually make it to Canada and then they realize it's a scam, right? So there's a big problem with that, and that's why Canada is adjusting their temporary foreign worker program, right? So if you're coming here on a work permit, they just want to make sure that the company is actually recruiting people because they can't find people here in Canada, or are they part of a scam, or are they taking advantage of people, right? So they are really taking this seriously, and they're making things more difficult for the employer, right? Because they want to make sure only employers that are actually legitimate, people who are actually trying to hire Canadians and permanent residents, they can find it, okay, then you can bring someone in. And they're also taking into consideration the unemployment rate, right? So if the unemployment rate is really high in the city where the company is located, I mean, why are you going to bring someone from overseas if the unemployment rate is really high? You should hire someone in your city, right? So they're making all these changes, and of course, what's the goal here? The goal is to try to eliminate these people who are scammers, right? They're trying to take advantage of people, and of course, give the jobs to people who are already here in Canada. So this is the priority. Try to employ Canadians, permanent residents, people on work permit, and then of course, if you can find it, all right, maybe you can bring someone in from overseas. So these are big changes for people who want to come here on a LMIA, right? So things are changing very fast, but it doesn't mean that everything is bad news. There are some good news. So students are now allowed to work 24 hours a week. So before this update from November, students could work up to 20 hours. So now they bumped the hours to 24 hours per week, and you can of course keep working full-time when you are on a scheduled break. So that's really good news. There are some really recent news regarding students changing institutions, right? So let's say you're studying at college A and now you want to go to college B. Now you have to apply for a new study permit, right? So they're also tracking these movements, right? Where are students going? What are they doing? Why are they changing colleges, right? So they're keeping an eye on the students and what they're doing. So you need a new study permit if you're changing colleges or university. And of course you need a new co-op work permit, but that's standard. Other updates regarding students. So people who are applying for a study permit after November 1st, you need to meet some requirements so you can have access to PGWP, the postgraduate work permit. So for example, if you apply for a bachelor's or master's, right? You will need to take a language test, right? So this is a requirement, and why they're doing that? They're doing that because some people, even though they do have a diploma, like they cannot communicate in English, right? So you're wondering, are these institutions actually, legitimate or not, or how you graduate and you don't speak the language, right? So they're gonna keep tracking that, and they wanna understand what's happening with the colleges and universities, right? So there are restrictions now with the language, right? You need to take a language test for PGWP, and in some cases you need to graduate from an area in high demand, right? So this is, again, these are big changes. Why? Because they want people in healthcare, they want people in construction, they want engineers, they want IT professionals, right? IT professionals, the demand decreased a lot lately, but healthcare, I mean, it's the biggest, in my opinion, healthcare is the biggest area in demand here in the country. And just to give you an example, today if you go to the hospital, at least here in Halifax, you're going to be waiting for maybe 6 to 8 hours to see a doctor, right? Imagine you waiting with a toddler or with your children, or maybe you just standing there for 6-8 hours to talk to a doctor, right? If you go to emergency, or if you go to a walk-in clinic, maybe they're full for the day, you have to come back next day, right? So there's a big crisis here in healthcare, and I'm not surprised they are targeting this sector. And let's see other changes. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to write on the chat there. But I'll just keep going with the updates here. And the biggest changes that we see are always targeting students and foreign workers, right? These are the big groups that are being targeted with the recent changes. We're gonna see a reduction in the number of students and foreign workers. And the idea here is that the population in Canada is gonna actually decline in 2025, 2026. And then in 2027, the idea is that the population will grow a little bit. So actually we're gonna see something that is very uncommon in Canada, because the goal was always to increase the population, right? The goal is always bring more and more people and as many students as we can, workers, permanent residents, but now we're gonna have caps everywhere and we're gonna reduce the population, right? And I just my goal is to have like a 30-minute Instagram live, and I'm gonna save this video later if you wanna watch on Instagram or if you wanna check our YouTube channel. I'm gonna upload that video on YouTube as well, and then you can watch that in full. Maybe you missed something, right? And I believe these are the main updates that we have to cover today. Let me see if I'm missing something that is really important. Oh yeah, Canada is also trying to reduce the numbers of people who are going to the border, right? So before these recent changes from June, you could actually apply for PGWP, for a postgraduate work permit at the border. That's what we call flagpole. And now they don't want that anymore, so you cannot really apply for PGWP at the border. And I know Canada, they are also having a big issue with people crossing the border, right? There are a lot of people coming from the US now, trying to cross the border. Is really, really busy. So they're cutting the PGWP at the border. You cannot do that anymore. And honestly, I don't recommend people to apply for anything at the border. It's always a risk. But there are cases where, yes, you have to apply at the border to get maybe a work permit, right? So every case is unique. And what I recommend, if you have questions, maybe you want to ask questions to us. I'm a licensed immigration consultant. Maritimes Immigration has been in business for 5 years now. We help many people come to Canada on a study permit, work permit, apply for permanent residence. We have strong experience and strong knowledge in Atlantic Immigration Program, Provincial Nominee Program, especially here in Atlantic Canada. We can help with express entry. So if you do have any questions, you feel free to book a consultation with us. We are actually running a Black Friday promo here in November, right? So for the entire month of November, if you book a consultation with us, you're gonna get a discount. So our standard fee is $170 for a 45-minute consultation. But if you use the promo code Friday24, the number 24, Friday24, on our website, you can actually get a discount. So we are giving a discount from $170 for $99. Or if you want to book our ultimate consultation, that's 80 minutes, $270 for $199. So you can use the same promo code Friday24 on our website, and we can have a meeting on Zoom. Maybe you're overseas or maybe you're here in the city, but it's just easy for you to have a Zoom call. We can do that. Or if you want to come in for an in-person meeting, we have an office here in Bedford. Bedford is located in Halifax. And we can have an in-person meeting. You can come into our office and we can talk, right? And maybe you have someone who is living overseas, maybe your husband or your wife. They can also join the call. Even if you're coming for an in-person meeting, we can have a Zoom call in our boardroom, all right? So if you guys need any help, if you have any questions, if you want to book a consultation, just reach out to us. You can talk to us on Instagram, WhatsApp, email. So we're here to help you in your pathway for permanent residency in Canada. Or if you want to come here as a visitor, student, or worker, all right? Thanks, guys, and we'll be back with a new Instagram Live in a few days. The next Instagram Live will be about immigration in 2025, what to expect, what is going to happen, and in my opinion, how you can prepare to immigrate to Canada in the coming years, not only in 2025, but maybe in 2026, 2027, and beyond, right? So keep an eye on our Instagram. We'll let you know when we have the date, and then we'll be here live to discuss immigration in the coming years, all right? See ya. Thank you.